Hey guys, Tyler here, and this is the Garage Warrior podcast, or I should say video cast now. I got my good friend Logan. Logan was on the podcast back, I think, on episode 2.
No, I
So
think it was episode 1 actually.
it might have been episode 1, yeah. So it's been a
Yeah.
long time, right? We're on episode 30 something now. I can't remember off the top of my head. But so Logan came back on the show. We just did a seminar out in San Diego. We covered a ton of kettlebell stuff, bodyweight stuff, and I wanted to bring him on the call to talk about bodyweight movement progressions, about perfecting your pull-up, about the best lower body bodyweight exercises, about the best abdominal bodyweight exercises. A lot of the stuff that me and Logan do is the same. But let's dig into the background here, Logan, and just kind of give people a 50,000-mile view of who is Logan Christopher, what is he trying to teach, just in case they haven't run across your stuff before.
All right, I was extremely weak and scrawny growing up. There was a time when I couldn't even do a push-up. I remember not being able to do a pull-up. Fast forward many years after high school, really got serious about training, especially starting with the bodyweight stuff. Since then, I've used kettlebells a whole bunch, feats of strength, barbells, all kinds of different things. My sort of philosophy is, every tool has its uses, its advantages and disadvantages, bodyweight being one of those. And I just have so much fun with different forms of training. It's all good. So you find something you like, then you stick to it, you're going to get phenomenal results. Of course, you got to know the proper ways to use something. And bodyweight is one area where it seems it's a little more difficult than other things because you got to be progressive with the movements rather than just adding, a little plate to the bar.
Sure. Well, let's dig into that because, I know we both talked about this before. It's challenging for especially the novice trainer to really think about what the biggest mistakes they're doing with bodyweight training. And you just mentioned it, like a lot of people just go for reps and reps and reps, and then they get cashed out on reps or they get an overuse injury or something. And you're talking about movement progressions and stuff. So in your eyes, what are the worst mistakes people are making and how can we fix them?
Well, just the common conception of bodyweight training is, okay, you got push-ups. Some people, most people don't even think of squats, but push-ups and sit-ups, pull-ups, just those basic exercises there. And that's great, but thing is, like you said, people are just going to, if they stick with just those exercises, they're going to be adding rep after rep. And after a while, if you really want to pursue strength, getting to 50, 100 reps in something like a push-up is great. But to really become stronger, you have to make the exercise harder to do. If you
Sure.
don't do that, then you're still going to get some benefit from doing it, but it needs to become a harder exercise. That's what gymnastics, all the high-level strength bodyweight stuff out there is. It's more complex versions of the exercise that have less leverage on the body, that require you to use more weight or less limbs, and these all make it much harder. Thus, you can build more and more strength with them.
Yeah, so I just want to kind of reiterate that point because it's so easy to make when you've done this for a long time, but sometimes you just don't get it when you're like new to this stuff. And basically, when you're doing like a deadlift or a back squat with a barbell, all you got to do is add a plate, and that makes the exercise progressive. You're progressing forward. And if you just sit there with 135 pounds on a barbell and you do that for the rest of your life and add reps and whatnot, it's just not going to really do you too much good. You're going to get really good at doing reps with that barbell. And that's
Yeah.
the same thing that Logan's saying with the bodyweight is if you just do push-ups all the time, it's like freezing yourself on like a barbell squat or a barbell bench or a dumbbell press or whatever exercise you're doing. And what we want to do is make sure you're constantly progressing. So it's easy to do with weights. All you got to do is add plates. You can do movement progressions with those as well. I don't know if it's more complex, but it's a different route than bodyweight exercises.
Yeah.
With bodyweight exercises, you got to make them harder. So just to kind of re-clarify.
Let me give an example.
Yeah, I was going to
that
say, give
will
us a good
really
example.
drill this home. And this is the cool thing with bodyweight exercise. Once you understand this, the same basic exercise. Let's stick with the push-up here. It's the pushing motion of the body that can be scaled to someone that is extremely weak, has no strength really at all the way up to the most elite level of strength gymnastics, all kinds of stuff out there. So if we take a push-up, even beyond or easier than doing a kneeling push-up would be doing push-ups against a wall.
Right.
There's almost none of your body weight you're doing. You're just basically doing the mechanical motion with a tiny fraction of your weight. You can go down the wall, but then you can work yourself up to kneeling push-ups. Once you can do those regular push-ups. From there, rather than going onto one hand, which is what a lot of people like to do, and that's a fine exercise, I find it's a little better if you can just up the intensity of the movement, handle more of your weight while just sticking on two arms. That way you don't need to work separately, it's a little bit of a time saver. So going from regular push-ups, you'll do elevated push-ups. Then we can start working toward the handstand push-up series, doing something like a pike press first, then varying degrees of partials of handstand push-ups. Once you get to the head, then you continue it further until you get to full range handstand push-ups. Once you're there, you can go even further, but that's a pretty elite skill that the majority of the people in the world cannot do. But honestly, if you're willing to spend some years, understand it's going to take some time, but if you're putting in the work, you can gain these great body weight strength movements.
Well, I mean, how many times, Logan, have we been working out together? Because Logan and I have been training partners on and off for years. When somebody would see something that you're doing that we would consider something that everybody should do, like a handstand push-up against a wall, and they say, "Oh my God, that's so amazing!" Right? Right?
Yeah.
People's perception of these skills is that they're so difficult. But what you're saying is, hey, if you just spend like 3 months on this exercise, 3 months on that exercise, in like a year and a half, 2 years, anybody can work up to that.
It entirely depends on where people are starting out. When I first started, I mean, this is the cool thing is people are looking at me, oh, you can do all these cool body weight things. Like I started from zero with this stuff. I could barely even hold a handstand against the wall. The first time I tried doing a handstand push-up, I just bent my arms a little and came rocketing down
I remember that.
to the floor. I had to build it really step by step. That was one of my first major training goals, was to be able to do a handstand push-up. And I'm just talking about touching the head to the ground and pushing back up. It took a few months of training specifically on that for me to be able to get it, but I got that, and that was many years ago. So now I'm doing some things like I've managed a tiger bend. I won't say I'm doing that regularly. Freestanding handstand push-ups, repping out full range handstand push-ups. It's once you understand progression with body weight exercises, then you can really go far with them. But without understanding how you can scale movements one way or another, then you're going to get stuck in certain areas. That's the main thing. If you can make the jumps more incremental, the progressions more incremental, then you're more likely to actually have faster progress but never get stuck at a point. Because if you're trying to jump just from a push-up to a handstand push-up and don't know how to do anything in between those two, then you're going to fail. You're not going to have much. Luckily, that's like trying to jump from that 135-pound deadlift up to 405 instantly without using those weight progressions along the way. So you need to know those movement progressions in order to make that.
Right. Another way to think about it too is like, everybody can walk on a curb, right? We can all balance on a curb. But if I put that curb 6 inches wide up above a big valley, you wouldn't be able to do it, right? Because there's no progression there. But if I went up 1 foot per day, you'd probably get it over the course of a year. So anyways, so little steps. So Logan, for bodyweight training, what are kind of the foundational movements that people need to be doing?
Okay. Some form of pushing movement with the upper body. Some people like to divide it into different planes of movement, like the vertical plane where you're pushing overhead, and the horizontal, which would be a bench press or a push-up. And that's good, but as long as you have some type of pushing movement, you're good. Same with pulling movement. Which would be a pull-up or inverted rows, something along that line. Then some sort of squat movement, which body weight squats, you can work yourself up to pistols. It's great to always do some form of squat, but you can also get away with some other form of leg training, like doing hill sprints as an example. It's not quite a squat pattern, but it's definitely training the legs, one of my favorite exercises. You can't really do a lower body pulling movement like the deadlift with body weight exercises. So that's one reason that I think that people that just go body weight only, you can get really fit doing that. You can get really strong, but if you really want to be overall the strongest you possibly can be, sure, I think you do need a mix of handling your own body weight as well as handling other objects. So once again, pushing movement, pulling movement, squatting movement, and then I'd also add some sort of ab or core focused element in there as well.
Well, let's dig into them one at a time and give some people some stuff that they can work with at home, some things they can work on. So the pushing movement, everybody wants to show muscles, right? The chest and the triceps and the arms and the shoulders, right? So maybe take us through kind of an example of, where people go with the pushing movements on a movement progression, how you teach it, what kind of reps, sets they should be doing before they move on to the next thing. I know it's kind of a rough thing without seeing the individual, but just give me an idea, give them an idea of how they can work through a series of progressions for pushing.
Right. Well, here is something that can be useful for any sort of movement that you're doing, is to just sort of set like a benchmark number. let's say for this instance 10 reps. If you like lower reps, you can use something like 5 reps. You could use something higher if you wanted to, but you just want to get that benchmark number. Now if you have a series of progressions in movements, so we have the wall push up, a lower wall push up, then you can do the kneeling push up, the regular push up, incline push up, and you can do a couple different degrees of that. The pike press, which is sort of like a handstand push up, except you're only handling part of your body weight. And then we get to a partial handstand push up, a full handstand push up, then full range. So let's say we got about 10 different progressions right there, which you could actually make smaller steps in between them.
Sure.
But if you just want to do something simple, like I'm going to do 3 sets of this exercise, once you can get up to doing 10 reps for each of those 3 sets, you know, the first time you try the wall push-up, you may easily be able to get all 10 reps. So then you're going to move to the next level of progression. And let's say there you're only managing 8 reps and then you're struggling at that point, so you can't quite get there. Come back the next workout, try to get those 3 sets of 10. Once you hit that benchmark number, then you move to the next level of progression. If you can just continue doing this, and there may be some points where you need to tweak things a little, but overall this is a double system of progression, and it's going to get a person moving through the progressive levels of the exercise.
Sure. So give us a few like set rep schemes that people could use as templates. You mentioned 3 sets of 10, and once they get there, moving on. What about like some single set routines or some more multiple set volume-based routines?
Yeah, you honestly, you can do anything. People are always interested in sets and reps, but the more I get in training, like that really doesn't matter that much, in my opinion.
Yeah.
As long as what you're doing is progressive, you're going to get results. What I personally like to do is a mix of lower rep stuff, where of course I'm working with a higher intensity, and higher rep stuff. So even within the same form of exercise progression, I'm not just going to stay at one level. Let's say I was working toward just touching the head to the ground handstand push-up, and I was just working towards that. I would work with that, and that may be something where I'm doing singles in. You could use some things like negatives, some isometrics could also be added in there. But let's say I can manage like a 1 rep or maybe a double. So I'd do some of that, but I'd also go back and work some elevated push-ups at a higher rep range, like 15 to 20, and I'd switch it up from workout to workout. And by doing this, what I personally feel is that mixing it up between the rep ranges is going to further stave off plateaus from happening and allow you to get better progress, because you're going to get carryover from one exercise to the other. When you do something that's really strong, then when you do something that's light, in comparison, it's going to feel much easier. You're likely going to be able to do reps. But if you also build up a little more of that rep or strength endurance, then that's going to help to bring up your high-end strength as well.
Yeah, I think that's such an important point to touch on. Maybe we could dig a little deeper into that before covering the pull and the lower body and the core stuff. Because, you know, like you said, people are married to sets and reps. They want this magic scheme that's going to give them results. But what you're saying is what we really need to focus on is just getting better at movement, right? And constantly focusing on getting better at movement. So expand on that a little bit, Logan.
Oh, I actually had someone ask me this. You know, he was looking at the old-time strongman. Is what sort of sets and reps did they use? And my answer was, you are not focusing on the important thing. Because across different old-time strongman, all different degrees of, you know, what sorts of sets and reps they did, but literally within the same strongman, they were doing that sort of thing where sometimes it was high intensity, so you're using low reps, sometimes you're doing lower intensity and doing a higher rep. So this, I don't know, it works for me. I do it in every single exercise that I do, whether it's body weight or weighted. I'm mixing it up. I don't stick with something. I think that's great if you can understand that, you know, that whole benchmark moving once you get to 10 reps that I was describing. But within that, I would work the different exercises. So not just stick at the level you're at, but sometimes go a little harder, where you're going to work an exercise where you may only be able to do singles, doubles, triples, something along that line, sets of 5, and sometimes do something a little easier where you can really rep it out a whole bunch more.
It seems like a lot of people kind of turn towards that method as they grow in their training. You know, you got the